Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a early impression video, and it is a true early impression video. And this is one that I am absolutely honored to be doing this type of video for you guys. This is the type of content that I want to make. Really niche content is how I would describe it. This may not appeal to the vast majority of people out there who want to just go buy the modern version of Eros or Bleu de Chanel. This type of content is not for you. In fact, you may wonder who in the world would even watch a half-hour video on something like this. Because today we're going to talk about a fragrance that is limited to 50 bottles in the entire world. And it's from the House of Sherwood, and this is called Ambrosia. And I've worn this today as my scent of the day. I'm actually going to do a fresh spray on this hand, which is clean. There's nothing on this hand. Well, now there is. Look at the color of that. God, man, I am in love with this fragrance. So, first of all, disclaimer. I do have to say that this bottle was sent to me by Prakar Gupta as a gift. He wanted to know what I think of it, which I thought was hilarious because I wrote him today and I said, mate, you did not have to send me this for me to tell you you have an absolute hit on your hands. And if you're familiar with the House of Sherwood, they're a house that is new to the fragcom scene. I think he's really trying to get himself off the ground, trying to make a name for himself. And to be honest with you, my guess is if I just set this aside, okay, and didn't touch it for a couple years, this would be one of those fragrances like the early Areej Dore fragrances that would be almost like in sort of legendary status, I think, amongst collectors. So I have talked about the House of Sherwood, and interestingly enough, so this is how their presentation normally looks, right? Which I actually really like their presentation, and I've reviewed a couple of their fragrances. This is one of my favorites called Czar. I love Czar. Unfortunately, I think it is sold out, but Czar is an amazing creation, but these sold, I think, for like 70 bucks or something, very cheap, right? And one of the pitches, and if you go watch my early reviews from the House of Sherwood, one of my pitches from the house is that you got a lot for your money, okay? That these really smell like expensive niche fragrances in $70 bottles. The blending, the the materials used, the way it's all come together, the story that it takes you on, just everything. It's like such a dynamic fragrance, right? And it punches way above its weight class, which is very rare nowadays. It seems like nowadays you're hit with more and more fragrances, mostly because many of the houses that are putting them out are owned by the same big conglomerate. So the $400 Guerlain is owned by the same house that does the $400 Dore, is owned by the same house that does the $400 Louis Vuitton. And so you think you're getting different things, but they all kind of are competing in a similar space, that ultra luxury market, right? This is going the other way. This is giving you, and you always feel like you get less when you buy those for some reason, especially modern perfumery. For me, I feel 2023, it just turned 2024. It's January the 3rd of 2024. And so 2023 for me, if you've been following my journey, is really the year of what I call the artisanal brands for me. They're brands that I crave to wear. Like, I want to wear Areej Dores and Ensars and Bortnikovs. Like, I'll wear my vintage stuff, and a day or two will go by, and I'll be craving to wear something like this because many people want to learn about the real ingredients. You know, when you look at a note listing and you go to Parfumo, which I prefer, or Fragrantica, if you would prefer that, and you see in the note listing notes like Amber, Hyrax, Hyraceum, Civet, Castorium. You see things like Ambergris. These are animalic notes. These are notes that come from an animal. And yet, many times in perfumery, 99.99% of times, what you're smelling when you smell something like that is some sort of an accord created by the perfumer. They're not using real musks and real ouds and, that kind of thing in modern perfumery. Even if you go pay $500 for a Roscia, many times they're using synthetics from many of the same oil houses used from the same other big brands. Okay, so the reason I go through that again for our newer viewers is that these type of fragrances that are using the real thing have been sort of very high on my list this last year. It's really something that not only have I enjoyed wearing, but once you start wearing these sort of things, it becomes very hard to go back. It almost feels like you're taking a step back, right? And there are still many designers that I love. I love wearing M7. M7, even though it doesn't have a drop of real oud. At least I don't think it does. Don't come sue me, YSL, claiming, nope, if you really take the microscope, there's 0.00001%. No. It doesn't have the real ouds of the Ensars, the Bortnikovs, the Areejas, right? And so, you know, for me, once you start wearing those type of fragrances, it really feels like you've entered a completely different world, right? And that was the world of 2023 for me. And I've talked a lot about it on the channel. I've done a lot of reviews, and I've tried to bring these brands that are not as known to your attention. So, as of this taping of this video, I will tell you that there's only about 15 to 20 bottles left of this. But the reason that this marks, I think, this is like a line in the sand for me, for the House of Sherwood, because this marks the moment where this house went from doing fragrances that smell like $200 and $300 fragrances in $70 bottles to fragrances that smell like $1,000 Ensars. And I'm not making that up. I swear to God, when I put this on today, the very first thing that popped in my head with Ambrosia, and this is how it comes, by the way. This is the packaging for you packaging geeks. Comes like this with Sherwood on top. And the bottle is actually hand signed by Prakar Gupta on the back and individually numbered. Mine's 48 out of 50. And you've got the house name and his little brand on front. Look at the color of the juice. If you've ever seen some of the Ensars that use, you know, the super high quality ouds and real ambergris and stuff like that, look at the juice color. Look at the similarity. You know, look at that. And the reason that I bring this up is Ensar is big on when he does his pure parfums, he will replace perfumer's alcohol with an ambergris tincture. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe the ambergris tincture in this is 10%. I recently reviewed what many consider one of the best modern real ambergris fragrances you can buy. It's $240 from the House of Areej Parfums for 50 ml, and it's 7%. Ambergris tincture in that. And this is 10, I believe. This is $300 for 30 mils, which might sound like a lot, but this is my guess. I don't know this for a fact, so I'm speculating a little bit here. My guess is that if this were in an Ensar bottle, this would be $1,000 or $2,000. Or, you know, I saw an Ensar recently for $5,000. It was a 3 milliliter pure oud oil, like a very rare one, $5,000, right? Those are the crazy prices that are out there in this artisanal space, right? So my guess is that once he gets his name off of the ground, these type of fragrances would have to sell for more. You can't make money. I don't even know how this is $300 because the ingredients in here, the oud, the castoreum, the birch tar, the rose, the carnation, the iris, which you do get a lot of iris in the first hour, and that ambergris opening is literally mind-blowing. It's one of the most beautiful ambergris openings I've ever smelled. I'm not trying to oversell it. I'm just telling you that there are some, I have a lot of experience with real ambergris fragrances. I've reviewed some on the channel. I reviewed MXXX yesterday. The other big real ambergris fragrance that's being sold out there is called Ambre Supreme. I have a review of that. It's one of my very early reviews within the first month of having the channel. I reviewed this. And I really like both. I think I prefer Ambre Supreme to MXXX, to be honest with you. Even though I liked MXXX, didn't do it for me, especially not $240 for 50 mils, right? This wipes the floor with MXXX, in my opinion, as far as what you get and as far as my taste, because not only does it open with the huge burst of what smells like real natural ambergris, it can be a little bit funky, it can be a little bit fecal. For those of you that don't know, real ambergris is basically created inside of a sperm whale. They say that less than 1% of sperm whales are creating or create ambergris. And it's funny because someone left me a comment based on the video I did yesterday on MXXX, and they said, why does the website on Areej Parfums say it's ethically harvested ambergris? Of course it's ethically harvested. They just pick it off of a beach, you know, they're not killing the whale to get it. And that person is 100% right. I think some of these brands try and make it sound like they're doing something special by harvesting the ambergris ethically. No. You know, the ambergris is a byproduct. It's a waste product almost. What happens is these sperm whales eat things like stingrays, squid, cephalopods, something that has like a beak or some, you know, something on the animal that will maybe harm the intestinal tract of the sperm whale. And as a defense mechanism to keep the whale healthy, some whales will create ambergris, which is almost like a cocoon. So imagine like, you know how owls create like pellets that they spit out, and inside of that pellet will be like the bones of the rats and all the other things that they ate, right? The mice. Ambergris is kind of like that, but imagine a sperm whale on a large scale, right? So they'll many people think they cough it up, they hawk it up like a loogie, but some scientists think they actually goes out the poop chute, the back end, and it basically goes into this ocean, right? And in the ocean is the briny salt water. It's the sun shining on it. It really smells like the story of life. When you smell a real ambergris, and I've smelled this in Ensars that I've reviewed on the channel. I have reviews of EO1 and EO2. I have flanker reviews of EO1, which is called EO1 Assam on the channel. You can smell ambergris in these. I have an ambergris review coming up for a really good natural smelling ambergris from the house of La Via del Profumo, which I have a review from this house as well of a beautiful fragrance called Tabak. You can check that out. But this is a beautiful ambergris fragrance called Feromone, Parfums. And I've smelled, you know, if you've ever, let me show you, let me see, I wish I would have grabbed it before the video. Let me see if I can show you what real ambergris does. Give me just 1 second. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, it was easy to find, and I'll tell you why. If you look at the top of these right here, you can almost pick the real ambergris one out. You can see the crystallization around the outside of this is real white ambergris tincture. Look at what it does around the outside of the cap. It's almost like creating crystals, like ambergris crystals. Look at that. I can hardly open it. It just like snapped, and pieces of it like fell onto my hand. I don't know if you can see the ambergris crystals right there. But that's that briny, crystalline, salty, almost like this fresh skin-like quality. Very airy, diffusive, very, some say marine. It does add a marine oceanic aspect, but it's nothing like a blue fragrance. It's nothing like an aquatic fragrance, if that makes sense. It adds this, the way I've described it in the past is it's almost like it adds this atmospheric like feel to the fragrance. It makes the fragrance feel like, even if the fragrance is only this big, it makes it feel like it's this big. It makes the fragrance feel like it has a spotlight on it, like it's on stage and it has a spotlight, and all of the ingredients that are dancing on stage, everyone's eyes are on them because the spotlight's on them, you know, and they're on the stage. It lifts the other ingredients up. And while many a times, if you just dipped a blotter in this ambergris tincture, it may smell very sort of light, and it may smell soft, it may smell delicate, but remember, it comes from a sperm whale. So depending how long it actually sat in the ocean, the longer it sits in the ocean, the longer it sucks in that oceanic water, the longer the sun beats down on it, the longer it sits on the beach, the more it takes on less and less of the animalic side of things and more of this oceanic salty side of things. And so there's different levels to the ambergris. Sometimes you'll find brown ambergris, sometimes black if it's really fresh. But ambergris does add a little bit of an animalic touch, okay? And the reason I bring that up is when you first smell, even right now, I just sprayed it on 15. Look at that. 15 minutes ago, right? Oh, God. So what you get in the opening is this mixture of oud and ambergris with a little bit of castoreum. You get a little bit of lavender. It's really hard to, you know, lavender's another one of those notes to me like ambergris. Sometimes you sense its presence more than you actually smell it. And you can definitely sense the Bulgarian lavender in here. Excuse me, I'm still overcoming this cold. And along with a little bit of citruses. But what makes it so beautiful is the iris note that kind of joins in, this beautiful French iris. There's another animalic note in here as well called Choya Raw, which I have discussed previously. It's an attar made from the bark of sal trees, basically Sharia robusta trees, and it's described as adding the smoky, leathery, sweet, resinous, ambery undertones, right? And so what happens is the fragrance starts out not like an amber fragrance, okay? So it doesn't, the name Ambrosia gives people this idea that this is going to be an amber fragrance. It's going to be like, you know, Grand Soir or something. It's not. It's not that at all. This is much more of an ambergris fragrance. And the only time that, I'm telling you, the first thing that came to mind when I smelled this were $1,000 Ensar fragrances. And there are other, you know, ambergris fragrances that you could point to, something like this. But if you've gone down this path of exploring real, you know, wanting to know what real musk in a fragrance does, real deer musk. This is one of my favorite real deer musk fragrances, Inverno Russo. The reason I point this out is this is kind of for the people that want to take the next step. You know, in my opinion, they want to take the next step. They don't want to just go to the perfume counter. They don't want to wait for, excuse me, I'm going to grab a cough drop. I was hoping my voice would hold up, but I do talk all day for work. So not only am I talking all day, but then putting the video on and talking for you guys, my voice is like, help me. Excuse me. Sorry about that. This is for, I think, the people that really want to kind of take the next step. You know, they don't want to wait for what Francis Kirkjohn's going to put out at Dore. They don't want to play that game. They don't want to spend the overpriced money for an oud fragrance that's mostly synthetics, right? This has the real, you get the real oud in here, and the oud smells very high quality. There's East Indian oud, and there's also Assam oud. So there's Assam oud and there's Castoreum, but it's not super animalic. You know how when I talk about Antaeus, it has that Castoreum note, but Antaeus also has that very posh side of it, you know, that Chanel poshness to it. Obviously, this is not a Chanel, but the blending on this is outstanding. For a self-taught perfumer like Prakar Gupta, absolutely fantastic. And as it dries, sorry to sniffle in your ear. Let me grab a sip of water. Apologies. Okay, so so as it dries, basically what happens is it never loses that airy, diffusive ambergris. Okay, that skin-like smell, almost like you sweated on yourself, on your skin, like you went to the gym and had a serious workout. Your heart beats 160, 170, 180, right? You're really going at it. You get home. Instead of going to the shower, you spray perfume on over your sweaty skin, right? So you're still almost, your skin is almost still wet, dripping with sweat, and you spray some perfume on top of it. And that's what the ambergris, it adds this human element to this. This is such, I wore this to work today. I felt like a god, honestly. I felt like a prince, a sultan, a sheikh, whatever you want to call it. I felt it. I mean, what a absolutely stunning fragrance. There are other florals that come in. There's carnation, Bulgarian rose, Madagascan ylang ylang, orange blossom. There's also a little bit of a sandalwood accord. There's patchouli. There's beautiful damask rose. But the, I would say the fragrance over time, from one wear, remember this is one wear, but I think there's only 15 to 20 bottles left. So, you know, one thing I will tell you is, I think that my guess is that this type of release, if Prakar can put out perfume like this at prices like $300, which I don't know if he'll be able to keep it there for the long haul. My guess is it's going to have to go up. It's impossible. I think he's basically making nothing on this to get his name off of the ground and putting it all into the ingredients and everything is what it really feels like to me. But my guess is he'll try to make this again. Like, if he can go from making, not that I would call $70 a budget fragrance, but when you go to the standard designers and they all start at $100, 70 kind of is getting into that budget category now, right? So from going to something that smells very expensive and high quality for $70, now to taking the next step and competing with the Russian Atoms of the world, Areej Dore, Ensars of the world, the Bortnikovs, right? Competing with them and doing it and really on their level, not like a junior competitor. This is like a shot across the bow. This is like a, hey, I have arrived. The problem is that the ingredients are probably so expensive in this that it's probably very expensive he's not going to be able to make 500 bottles, right? So this is kind of for the person that I think wants to take that next step. But if you miss out on this round, because it'll probably sell out today. I'm not even kidding. I had people, when I unboxed this, people wrote me on Instagram, how is it? I'm blind buying it right now. I know there's not going to be very many left. So I think he had 25 bottles this morning. I think he's down to 15 to 20. One guy bought multiple bottles. And so my guess is even if this is gone, keep an eye out for this brand in the future is why I'm doing this video, number one. But number two, I also want to review it. It deserves a review. And unfortunately, I think this fragrance is a little bit of a shapeshifter. Ambergris kind of flows like the waves of the ocean. It really makes the fragrance sparkle. There's a beautiful effervescent sparkle. And if you've heard me describe Ensar Ouds previously, I always say that there's an Ensar sparkle to his releases. And the reason is he uses very high doses of real ambergris tincture in his fragrances. And you get that here. You absolutely get that in Ambrosia. But I think as it dries down, you get more of the patchouli, more of that ambery undertone, like I mentioned with the Choy Ral. There's a Spanish labdanum note in here, which is beautiful. More of that labdanum and tobacco starts to come in, but I don't think it ever truly turns into just an out-and-out amber, because it feels like that sparkly, skin-like, sweaty, slightly animalic ambergris plays the role all the way through. Like, it's sort of sitting at the center of the stage. All the dancers are going around it, and it stays at the center of the stage. And while there's a lot of things going on, you know, it's Cirque du Soleil all around the outskirts, it is right there in the middle. And it's just beautiful. I mean, I wish everybody could smell this. I wish everyone who was a frag head who wants to take that next step could smell stuff like this, or could smell fragrances like Inverno Russo with the real musk in it, real Siberian deer musk. I really think that is like the end of the road for a frag head. Like, once you've come to these type of fragrances, you can't, there's really nowhere else to go. This is like, you know, this is the stuff that these type of fragrances, and of course Ensar is known for using Sultan, the late Sultan of Oman, who founded Amouage, Sultan bin Qaboos, I believe his name is, using, you know, from his personal stash. After he died, they sold some of it off. Some of his very rare ouds and roses and stuff like that. Excuse me. So, man, I can't wait to be done with this cold. So basically, you know, you think about if these materials are being used in these type of fragrances, and they're, you know, the Ensars are being sold for $1,500, $1,800, $2,000. That's the stuff the royalty is wearing. I mean, that's the stuff the princes in Saudi Arabia are buying up all of the Taif rose oil. So before the little bit that gets left gets trickled out to the market, right? That's the quality of fragrance that we're talking about. And I would put this right up there with it. I mean, and I've smelled a lot of fragrances in my life. I'm not calling myself an expert by any stretch of the imagination, because I'm just a guy who loves fragrances. It's a hobby for me, but I've smelled a lot and I've talked about a lot. I've almost done 800 videos in the last couple of years. This is definitely up there with some of the best artisanal fragrances that I've smelled. And so it's something that I've really shifted towards, that artisanal focus. You know, obviously vintage always. My heart will always be with vintage. But the new stuff that's coming out at Guerlain, Tobacco Honey, or none of that stuff interests me, you know. The new Dore, new look, whatever, Francis, I don't care about that. Louis Vuitton, you know, I've reviewed a couple on the channel, but $400 for that type of perfumery does not interest me anymore. This is where stuff like this is where I would want to spend my money. And not just this. I mean, I would include stuff like Via del Profumo, which is a 100% natural brand. But, I mean, it lasted all day. I could still smell this. It's 6:18. I got to work at 7:30 when I sprayed this on, right? I sprayed this on before I went to work at 7:30. It's 6:18. I can still smell my original spray. And, you know, even with a little bit of a runny nose, I can clearly smell this. Absolutely clearly smell it. and it's beautiful. It's I think he's got a real, I think this is like like I said, shot across the bow. This is the transition for Sherwood. This is where they take the next step and really start competing with the big boys, and they can almost, I think, like rebrand themselves, rebrand themselves. Obviously, the fact that you can make a $70 fragrance smell like a $300 niche fragrance is amazing. But this is the highest quality Sherwood fragrance I've smelled. And I've smelled a bunch of them. I've got still more samples to discuss that I haven't talked about on the channel from Sherwood that I've been sitting on. But as far as quality of the ingredients go, hands down, this is taking it to the next level. And one of the top levels, I might add. It feels like really competing with the Areejes, the Ensar, stuff like that. And so when you're learning about these ingredients and you want to smell the real thing, in my opinion, there's really a handful that most people really rush towards. One is oud. The oud that you're smelling in modern Guerlains or, modern Dior's, modern Louis Vuittons, the oud and those type of Salvatore Ferragamo oud, that type of stuff is, it is, once you smell the real thing, it's not that you'll be too good for those type of fragrances, because like I said, there are still some fragrances that, Leather Oud by Dior, I love. Even though I don't think there's much, if any, real oud in there, I still love it, right? But you'll look at them differently, right? But once you've started to explore the artisanal space, there's a handful of ingredients that you really should try and smell. Oud, definitely. Musk, if you can get your hands on some real musk fragrances, 100% you should. It's one of the most beautiful and enchanting and almost spiritual. It literally is like having a spiritual experience when you smell real musk. And while I like the synthetic musk, it can't recreate what the real musk does. And the other big one is ambergris. Real ambergris is so impossible. It's almost impossible to describe. Sometimes it has like a spark fizziness, like opening a can of soda a little bit. Sometimes it has like a, and I say that because of that effervescent quality, right? But sometimes I think the even better description is just imagine the sun sparkling off of the ocean, and just imagine imagine standing on the shoreline and looking out at the ocean and just thinking about how vast it is and how small we are as one person. And just imagine the sun hitting the ocean, and every single wave that kind of washes up on the beach has a different shape, right? The water hits differently. Some are bigger, some are lower. The water hits here and there. And just imagine the sun at high noon, and every single speck of light reflecting off of the water is in a different spot, different space, right? Different, and it'll never be exactly in that setup again, because the water's going to come different. There'll be a lot of sparkles, but they'll be maybe in a little different places coming off of the water, because the ocean is constantly moving, right? Constantly changing and evolving. And that's what real ambergris adds to a composition. It's like just an endless, it's like trying to plot how many points on a golf course a ball could land. It's impossible. And it just enhances all of the materials. So the birch tar, which adds that oily leatheriness undertone, and it's here, and the castoreum usually adds that, right? I don't know the quality of castoreum that's being used here, but I would guess it's very high. But it doesn't overtake, it doesn't overpower. Yes, it's a little bit funky. It adds a little bit of that metallic, sparkle in your eye. Like maybe you caught one of those sparkles off the water and it just hit you wrong and like blinded you for a mere second. Like when you look at the sun, you see the sun even in your eye when you blink, you see the shape of the sun. It's a little bit like that. There's a little bit of leatheriness to it. Also, I forgot to mention, damn, I don't know the name of it, but there is a specific type of vetiver. It's called Baratpour. Baratpour Khus vetiver is actually used in this fragrance, which is a very rare type of vetiver. Now, it's not a huge vetiver note profile, but there is a long-lasting vetiver in here, and that's a very rare exotic vetiver. Most vetivers don't come from Baratpour anymore. So you get a lot. My point is you get a lot for your money. So, you know, I know there's going to be people that are going to say, oh, Ramsey, you got the free bottle. So how can I trust what you're saying? I can only give you what I can tell you, right? I disclosed the bottle was sent to me. It doesn't change my reaction at all. If I had bought this, I would say this is the best $300 I probably spent on a fragrance in recent memory. And I told this to somebody today who actually blind bought 2 bottles. I said that this will be the buy of 2024 for you probably because, or one of the buys of 2024. Because this type of perfumery is really, I think, what me as a frag head now is going towards. You know, this is the type I want to spend my money on. This, and also very rare vintages. Like, for example, I'd love a bottle of Guerlain Jeudi, right? Who wouldn't? I'd love a bottle of Chanel Bois Noir, the precursor to Egoiste, right? Those type of rare. I'd love a bottle of Guerlain Cuir de Russie. Yeah, good luck with that, right? Those type of rare, like if I'm going to start spending money on fragrances, these either stuff like this or the very rare, hard to find vintages from the past. I'd love a bottle of Caron's Tabac Blanc, vintage pure parfum, that type of thing, you know? And so that's kind of where my focus is. Buying the new Dior New Look, I'm out. That type of stuff doesn't interest me anymore. So anyways, I just wanted to do this video. I'm sure these will be gone in no time. And people watching this video later on will be like, man, I wish I could get a bottle. I'm sure Picard will make more if this obviously comes off as a hit, which I think it absolutely should. Oh, it is so, and you know, the other thing about it is it seems like a little bit of a shapeshifter. Like I get different elements at different times, and I could see this being one of those fragrances you have to spend months and months with to really wrap your head around it. It feels like a little bit of a chameleon. It changes, but but that feels like the side dancers around that main oud, ambergris, beautiful castoreum, just amazing. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this early impression. I've only worn it once. Again, this is a one-day do a video quick wear because again, there's a limited amount of bottles and I wanted to give anyone a chance to grab this. If you've got an extra $300 in your pocket, definitely one to look into, do some research on it. The downside with this brand, Picard's biggest obstacle right now is he doesn't have a website. So you literally have to hit him up on Instagram, send Sherwood Parfums a note on Instagram and say, hey, I want a bottle, and he'll ship it to you. And you have to pay him that way. You know, you've got to pay him however you pay him. I don't know. But he doesn't have a website as of yet. That's being worked on. So the once he gets his website off, I think this is just going to take off like a rocket for Sherwood. I think literally getting Sherwood fragrances now, I think it's like getting in on the early stages of Areej Dore, in my opinion. You know, that's what it feels like to me. A brand that many frag heads will kind of look at the early releases of Sherwood fondly. So anyways, that's my take. I was going to say if you've had a chance to smell it, but I think there's only a handful of people on earth that have smelled Ambrosia. But if you have smelled it, leave a comment so others can read about it. You know, if you've smelled some of his other work, Sherwood Parfums' other fragrances like Czar, Gentleman, Vetiver Royale, which I have all reviewed all of those on the channel. I want to still review Paradise and Bespoke, and there's a handful of other ones I want to review still. I've got some samples. So you will be hearing more about this brand for sure. Like I said, this is the type of content that I want to do. The stuff that no one else is doing. I promise you no one is doing videos on Ambrosia. In fact, I'm the only one in Parfumo that has it listed as I actually own it. So thank you for watching. Hope you took something out of this video. Do leave a comment. Love the interaction with you guys. The back and forth on the channel is amazing. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.